Welcome to Tim Willetts this afternoon, and thank you for joining me in this interview for HRGB as our chair.
Thank you, Amanda.
Okay, so when did you start handbell ringing?
I started in 1987. I remember it was the year before the Exeter Symposium.
Yeah.
Yes, and I remember Alan Collins, who was the team leader of the team that I joined, St Lawrence Chobham Handbell Ringers. I can tell you more about that later if you want. I remember he was getting a group together to go to the International Symposium in Exeter in '88.
Yeah.
And as a brand new team member, I think I was probably considered to be much too callow and inexperienced to attend an international symposium. So I didn't get to go. My ex-wife and I didn't get to go.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, that reminds me of the date. It was 1987.
So that's quite fitting actually with Ryan Price passing away recently, because I've been looking at the symposium in Exeter in 1988 when he was there.
He was there?
Yeah. And,
as I understand. I mean, I wasn't, but yes.
Okay.
He was the mastering and conductor of the British piece of music at, one of the British pieces of music at Exeter.
Yes.
I think he had arranged a piece of music that was played in Japan at the previous symposium.
I see. Yeah.
But I don't think he conducted it.
Okay.
But he was emblematic of HRGB's initial exploration of international links. He wanted to make those links and pushed for those links to happen. Yes, I've always rather seen him as somebody I would like to emulate in all sorts of ways.
That's nice. So how did you first learn about handbell ringing?
Probably a year before that, maybe 2 years before, but certainly a year before that, so 86 I suppose.
Yes.
My ex-wife Eileen had a number of difficulties with her back. She'd started towel ringing a year before that and was told after 6 months of towel ringing that it really wasn't a good idea because her back was not strong enough.
Yes.
And so, although actually subsequently she's, luckily for her, has been absolutely fine.
Good.
But at the time, I think she'd only recently had our two children, and so there were weaknesses in her back. So she had joined the ringing band at St James's Church in Weybridge.
Okay.
Which is where now the Weybridge Handbell Ringers are still based, as well as the Weybridge Handbell Ringers. And when she realised she wasn't going to be able to carry on with towel ringing, one of the towel ringers said to her, "Look, there are some handbells that are sitting here in the church tower. They haven't been used for years and years and years and years. So why don't you get a group together to use the handbells?" And she thought she'd quite like to do that. So she was the first person in our family to actually get interested in handbells.
Yes.
And she drew a small group of friends together and their children. I think our children at the time were probably a little bit young. They joined a couple of years later.
Yes.
Because this was when Ben was 7 and Sam would have been 5, I guess. She said to me, come. And I said, "Oh, there's no way you're getting me to do that." Anyway, she persevered, and a small group got together, and they practiced as St James Handbell Ringers, St James Weybridge Handbell Ringers. And then she wanted to learn more about what sort of techniques to use and so on. And somebody on the South East Region Committee, I think maybe it was Wendy Rowland, said to her, "There's a chap in Chobham, a chap named Alan Collins, who, just out of interest, both, we've mentioned Wendy Rowland, her husband Keith has just been awarded or elected Honorary Life Member yesterday at the AGM, and Alan Collins, who has also yesterday just been elected Honorary Life Member of the Society. So both of them were very important role models for people, I think, back in the 1980s and 1990s. So she went over to Chobham And Alan welcomed her with open arms and said, yes, come in, join the team. So she joined the team.
Excellent.
And she came back the first Friday she'd been there, and she said, you really have got to come and do this. This is just wonderful. She was so excited about it. So I did. So I went to try it. So she got me into that, and that, as I say, would have been by that point about 1987.
Okay, it's what you're saying about finding the bells in the church. It makes you wonder how many more bells there are to be found still like that.
When bell competitions in the North and the Midlands were at a very popular and at a high level, which was the late 19th century and the very, very early 20th century. I think probably there weren't that many groups in the southeast.
No.
It seemed to be the case that bell ringing perhaps didn't follow brass band ringing, but there seemed to be a synergy about the places where brass band ringing was big and the places where handbell ringing was big. Certainly in the North and the Midlands. I don't know about Wales at all. No. Maybe not in Wales. And I don't think in the southeast and southwest of England either particularly.
So if you look back over the years, what have been your most memorable moments in handbell ringing?
Oh my gosh. My most memorable moments. I suppose start this end of my handbell involvement. One of the probably the most exciting thing recently for me has been working with children in schools. The children of Cleves School, of course, came here last night and were playing in the concert here last night. And that was a group brilliant. They were good. I was really proud of them. And that was a group that I started 4 years ago. 2 years ago, I stopped, and the music teacher who was there at the time and is still there, Johnny Killens, took over. But there, and there was another school, St Paul's School in Addleston, who sadly, when I stopped teaching there, had to, their music teacher wasn't able to continue. She wasn't at all well. So at the moment, sadly at St Paul's, there aren't bells happening. But Cleves School, and both schools did really well in their music ensemble examinations, their London College of Music ensemble examinations. For me, that's been a very proud moment, watching them develop in the way that they have. I think my time with St Lawrence, Chobham and KIPHRA has made me very proud. They both groups ring really, really well. And ditto, my time with East Anglian Regional Team and the Northern Bell Orchestra. I was asked separately by Helen Foley, who was at the time and still is ringing with Dronfield, and Linda McCord, who rings, of course, with Bellfolk. He's the director of Bellfolk. In 2005, we went to the Royal Northern College of Music for the 100th anniversary of the last Bellevue concert. Bellevue competition. And that's where our national rally, if you like, was that year. And I led a workshop on conducting for my sins. And Helen and Linda both came to that workshop, and more or less immediately afterwards both of them said to me, in Helen's case, she was starting up the Northern Bell Orchestra. In Linda's case, she was re-establishing it after a slightly fallow period. It had previously been conducted by Michael Goodman, another honorary life member of the Society. And in 2006, I started as musical director of both of those large regional bell groups, and they've been very proud moments. I think going back then before that, there were one of my most memorable times was the very first International Symposium that I went to, which was in Edmonton in 1992. And that was just an eye-opener in terms of the number of musicians around the world who use handbells and enjoy making music with handbells. And it was just sort of like opening an entirely new chapter and a new vision, really. Because I hadn't understood how many people around the world enjoy this British musical instrument.
That's right,
and it's wonderful that it is it's a special British instrument. As far as I know, it's the only instrument in the world that has a musical instrument that has a British patent. I don't think there are any other musical instruments that have British patents. And of course, the patent was taken out I think in the late 17th century by the Corr brothers.
Yes.
And so, you know, handbells have been around for a long time. Touching on the International Symposium, another very proud moment for me was being asked at the symposium, the International Symposium in Cairns, about 6 months ago, if I would take on, from 2 years' time, take on the role of Executive Director of the International Handbell Committee, which is a real privilege. But I suppose as far as all of that time in handbells are concerned, my proudest moment of all has been being asked to take on the role of Chair of HRGB, which I was very proud to do and have thoroughly enjoyed doing.
Excellent, thank you. Okay. Do you play any other musical instruments?
Oh, God. Yeah, I sing, actually. I sing, yes, tolerably well.
What's bass, tenor? Bass. Okay.
And the teacher who now works with the Cleves at Cleves School, Johnny Killens, is the musical director of the choir that I sing in. And he's brought a new repertoire of music to that choir, which has been very exciting. So I really enjoy singing.
Yes.
And one of the wonderful things about going to choir practice is that it's one of the few times during the week when I don't have to make any decisions. All I have to do is sit there and be told what to do, which is wonderful. I like sitting there and being told what to do.
It's incredibly relaxing, isn't it?
It can be very relaxing, except, of course, for the person who is telling other people what to do, when it isn't very relaxing. And I dabble with the piano very badly.
Okay. No other instruments in the orchestra?
No. I learnt the cello. I learnt piano and cello when I was young.
Yes.
I never carried on with the cello.
No.
And as I say, I dabble with the piano a bit. But...
So when did you learn to read music? As a child? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know, I honestly don't know. I'm never conscious of having learnt to read music. I think I just learnt. I think as you learn to read, you learn to read music.
Okay.
And it worries me a bit that some adults who themselves have had difficulty reading music assume that children will have difficulty reading music. I just believe that all children, if they're presented with a musical instrument, a simple musical instrument like a handbell, and a piece of music and a bit of simple tuition, they can learn to read music very capably.
Well, children learn so much quicker, don't they,
than adults do.
Than we do now.
Sadly, recently, over the last 6 or 8 years, nearly 10, around 10 years, there has been such a lack of focus on music in schools, primary schools particularly, that nowadays there is less likelihood that younger children will know how to and will have the opportunity to learn how to read music. And that's very sad.
Yes.
And we need to do all we can as musicians to encourage schools and encourage children to learn to read music when they're very, very young. I remember being able to sing from music from the age of 12, and I have no recollection of having to labour to do that.
No, so
and therefore I believe I picked it up over the period of years before that, as I was singing in various children's choirs and so on. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. 3 and... Hello.